Mabuhay! My name is Desiree Raquepo, and I am a licensed massage therapist based in Cote-Des-Neiges. I became a massage therapist because I was fascinated by the body's mechanics and how awareness has a lot to do with how we feel, with how awareness of your body affects your body. It's fun for me to explore bodies. I get a lot out of making people feel better and feeling other people. So my mother came from Manila. They were originally from the north of Luzon and then they settled in Manila. And my father's family came from Batangas. Both of them met and arrived here around the late 80s. And it started with my grandparents having to work abroad. Obviously, the main idea was to settle in a foreign country, to have a better life, to have more opportunities. Both of my grandparents ended up sponsoring their whole families here. All of my 20-something cousins are born here. My aunts, my uncles are almost all Canadian. I probably have like a handful of relatives who are still in the Philippines. I'd say I identify as Canadian of Filipino descent because even if I was raised with Filipino values, even if I was surrounded by a lot of Filipinos growing up, I still drifted towards the local music scene, local art, local events. Et alors, je suis montréalaise d'origine philippine. I wouldn't necessarily call myself a Québécois because the mentalities are different, I think. I never really actually wondered about the Filipino community en tant que tel. As a kid, I never really obsessed about pageant queens or athletes or actors. Maybe a couple singers when I was in grade school, but that was about it. And I only started asking myself questions about my identity about 2 years ago. I used to live with an ex-partner and I found myself comparing our backgrounds a lot, and that made me realize that I didn't actually know much about my background. So I got curious. Preserving my Filipino identity is important to me because it taught me a lot of things. I learned to forgive, to accept, to prepare for the future. I think it's important for first-generation children to learn about their parents' backgrounds and to get a better understanding of their ideals. And for most, it's not easy to understand their parents because their parents would prefer to forget their upbringing and where they come from. After learning about the history of my elders and the communities they came from, I got better at interacting with them and I was able to relate to them through a different lens. When I was younger, I used to be proud of being Filipino whenever I would surround myself by large groups of Filipinos. Like, whoa, a takeover. So events like Hataw, Pista Sanayon, Independence Day, I used to get really excited about those. And I think because back in the day, the internet was kind of new. So everyone my age was on Asian Town and Asian Avenue. And so it's a hub of all sorts of different Asians, right? And I think that allowed people to want to distinguish themselves on what kind of Asian they are. And so I think back then people were more inclined to represent their ethnic backgrounds. Whether people are lip singing, dancing, rapping, making clothing, it made me feel really confident to be of this ethnic background whenever they were represented on the internet. Another thing that I think largely influences that is the fact that growing up in a neighborhood like Cote-Des-Neiges, where a lot of immigrants would settle, so like not only Filipinos, but a lot of immigrants would settle. And so I went to school with people from different backgrounds, and I think as a kid you're more likely to want to identify yourself and be proud of where you come from. The music I was really drawn to back in the day was music that fought for communities, that fought for the people. That was just how I thought people were. I grew up around the Panday Tinig, and so I took part of the Panday Tinig Junior Edition. There was a Junior Edition at one point. And so the Panday Tinig family played a big role in my life. I attended their shows, their practices, their Christmas parties. Another thing that played a major role in my life is the fact that my dad used to have a really tight, large amount of Filipino friends. So whenever there were events, like holidays or just going out to barbecue in the summer, just because we used to go camping a lot with this group of friends. So growing up, I was heavily surrounded, I would say, by Filipinos. Another thing we did as children is my cousins and we used to perform dances for Filipino parties held at St. Kevin's Church. We used to do that, and people used to throw change at us for dancing. We even used to speak in Tagalog before we started going to school. I think it was right before high school, I participated in the Miss Binibining pageant, which was, I see now, really not my thing, but it was an experience. It was fun. I wasn't good at it, but it was fun. It was a little embarrassing, but I don't regret it. It was fun. So as you know, I also conduct these interviews on what it means or how it feels to be Filipino Canadian. The idea came from after attending my first ever Filipino history related conference. This conference was organized and held by locals here. I was then really inspired to get involved. It kind of fueled my wanting to get involved with the community. And that same year, last year, that's when the first ever Filipino Heritage Month was announced. So I thought, okay, I definitely need to do something. And I decided to do interviews because at this conference, I heard a lot of stories from many different Filipinos. And that inspired me to want to share our stories. I would also organize discussions for Filipinos. And currently, I am volunteering for the Kapit Bisig COVID Relief Group. Kapit Bisig is an initiative led by grassroots organizers. So like Anakbayan and Pinay, Quebec. They're so inspiring to me. So I'm really humble and proud to be part of this. So my favorite thing about Filipino culture, or based on what I know about Filipino culture, is the food. We have so many different kinds of vegetables that other people don't even know of or eat. And that makes me, I feel really nourished by that. There's also foods like kare-kare, palabok, anything that's ginataan, pulutan like bopis, pig ears, lechon. But really what means the most to me is most of our self-relying, anemic, tribal or communal ideologies. A large part of me stems from kapwahood, and that's the recognition of shared identity. My least favorite thing about our community is the lack of representation and change. The factors that affect this, I think, is a lack of interest from our youth. So maybe a lack of information for the youth. The fear of looking uncool, and the lack of seeing ourselves in the other. Often people who are born here don't want to be associated with Filipinos or Filipino culture in general. And also the fear of being disrespectful to our elders. A lot of people are held back, or a lot of people are discouraged in our community to get involved. What I would like to see change in our community is for people to have more openness in discovering each other, more understanding of our parents, aunts, and uncles. I'd like to see more interest for growth for me, mostly from people my generation or younger, just so we can set an example of accountability and fearless leadership for the next generation. To point out anyone in our community I deem inspiring, I would say it would be everyone who is helping however they can in their communities. So translators, people who provide housing, food, people who clothe other people, people who protect people's rights, foreign workers, organizers, activists, social workers, caregivers, teachers, tutors, mentors, parents, artists, lifestyle enthusiasts. Basically, people who I deem inspiring in the community are people who do people work. And I'm pretty sure you're aware that Filipinos are people who do people work. People work is not easy, so tip my hat to. And I'm pretty sure you're aware that people who look out, that was hard. That was hard. I get it, guys. It's nerve-wracking, even for me.